Now, we've talked a whole bunch about how stereotyping makes the people who stereotype feel, in particular in the last example. So sometimes it can make us actually feel better. But what kind of effects can stereotyping have on the targets of the stereotypes? So not the actors who actively stereotype, but the people who are the targets of the stereotypes. And in particular, I want to talk about stereotype threat. So stereotype threat, for some definitions, this is the worry of being reduced to the stereotype. So the feeling that you carry with you the mark of belonging to a specific social group, and the worry that you are seen to belong to this group, and then this worry is accompanied by some cognitive load or pressure or a type of arousal that leads to underperformance. And I'm giving here the example of the actor Daniel Radcliffe, because for a long time in his career, he was, or that actually also happens to a lot of other actors, if they play one signature role, then for a long time they're seen to be kind of embodied by the role that they played, right? So in this case, that would have been Harry Potter. And Daniel Radcliffe might have experienced the worry that whenever people in the movies watch a different movie where he takes a leading role, they might still in the back of their minds think of Harry Potter. And he might have worried that he would be reduced to the stereotype of being the guy who played Harry Potter, right? So this might have led to underperformance. I'm not saying that it did, but for some actors it could. Okay, and this is just a relatively harmless example, but this type of stereotype threat also occurs in not just in famous Hollywood actors, but also for our regular, everyday type of social groups that we interact with. There's a famous seminal study, let me call it like that, a seminal study where students were asked to complete the SAT anagram puzzles. So they were asked to take a standardized test, and students were African American and white. And the experimental condition in the study to study the effects of stereotype threat was whether participants were asked to indicate their race as the first question in this test, or if they were asked to indicate their race as the last question. So the idea here is that participants in the first condition were kind of primed with the idea that they belonged to a specific group, that they were African American or that they were Caucasian. And there's a stereotype about African Americans that supposedly they wouldn't be as high performers as white people. In the control condition, then this race belongingness wouldn't be as salient and prominent in people's minds, right? So now we can take a look at the test performance conditioned on whether participants were alerted to their heritage or not, and with that alerted to the stereotype that exists about people of their race. And I could tell you the results now, but I won't. Instead, if you are part of the Tilburg University live version of this course, you will hear more about this study, and some more recent work about stereotype threat in the work groups. So you will work on finding out about stereotype threat and if this holds up through the history of social psychology, in readings and discussions in the work group sessions. And I hope that'll be an educational and an interesting experience for you. On the other hand, though, it's not only the case that stereotypes can make us feel threatened and therefore undermine our performance, but it might also be the case that stereotypes can actually boost our performance. And the idea that being exposed to a negative stereotype of another group actually lifts our own performance. And this is attributed to an increase in self-efficacy and lower self-doubt and so again, this is kind of related to what we've just discussed before, that putting others down sometimes makes us feel better. So there's also an example where being exposed to positive stereotypes of one's own group, though, can lift up one's own performance. So if I'm reminded of being part of a social group that is known to be great, for instance, Asian person being supposedly great at math, that might lift Asian American women's performance in math tasks, right? Okay, and again, I'm not going to give you the results for these studies, but I'm going to redirect you to the work groups so you can learn more about stereotype threat and stereotype boost there.